When the two women got to the door, and they went kind of fast because that was unusual to have that bell keep ringing like that, they wondered what's going on. They got to the door. Now, a normal person probably would have looked through a little peek hole and tried to figure out who is it, what's going on. But that's not the way Violet was. She opened the door right away. And there, both women were, it just almost took her breath away. There stood a tall, gaunt man who was just in terrible shape. You could tell he was. He was standing. Now, he'd managed to get his bicyclist helmet off, and he was standing there, and that revealed that he had this long blonde hair below his shoulders going, but it was all dirty and matted, and he was barely able to stay on his feet. And the bicyclist managed to get the words out, "My lady," and then there was this pause. "Wedge told me that you might," he couldn't get any further. As a matter of fact, if the women hadn't noticed that the one leg that he was standing on, the knee was beginning to buckle, if they hadn't noticed that, they might not have been able to catch him quick enough, because he fell really right in through the door, right into their arms. But they caught him and were able, before he went the whole way down, were able to get him over to the couch and lay him down on the couch. And then Violet immediately started to sort of bark orders. She said to Mandy, "Mandy, get those white claws by the sink and get me some water, and bring a Coke and a straw. Quick, go." And she did that. Now, Violet, in no time at all, she was back. And Violet took those claws and began to wipe this man down with his face at first, and just trying to cool him down, because she thought maybe he's had a heart attack. More likely he's got heat stroke. So then she said to Mandy again, "Quick, go up to my bedroom, and in the closet there's a canvas bag. Get that and bring that down, and bring some scissors." So off Mandy went, and Violet was left there waiting and watching. She'd kind of leaped into action. Now, Violet was a retired occupational therapist, but back in her youth, in her 20s, her first job had been as a first responder, and she was one of the best, and she knew it to this day. So she still had the skills, and she still had a few of the tools, and so that was just clicking in, and she was kind of leaping into action as a first responder. Logically, they probably should have grabbed a phone, dialed in 911, and waited till the professionals got there. But Violet had seen his eyes, and she knew they didn't have time for that. They had to do something now and fast. Well, Mandy got back down with the canvas bag, and in there was the wherewithal for Violet to take his vital statistics to see, what was his pulse, what was his temperature, what was his blood pressure. She got that stuff on there, but she was going quick, and one of the first things she noticed was that his temperature was over 104. Well, she got the scissors then, and she said to Mandy, help me, we got to get the clothes off this guy. And so she started with the scissors, cutting into the spandex outfit that he had, this bright colored bicyclist spandex outfit. He started to cut through any place to try to get those clothes off him, and then taking a rag, or a clean rag, wiping him down. She was moving really fast. Mandy hesitated a little bit. She didn't know about taking the clothes off this man, but Violet saw that, and she said, "Mandy, this is no time for modesty. We got to act now." And so on they went, and they finally got all his clothes off, and Mandy was still a little bit taken aback because she'd never seen that much of a man before. And Violet did take the time to smile and say, Mandy, would you go get those Tatus sheets? They already had a nickname for those sheets they'd be using. Go get those Tatus sheets for me. Come back. Well, that gave Violet time to work on this man's body to cool him down and to cool him down. And she was watching the vital statistics. They were bad, but they weren't getting worse. And eventually she began to see that his temperature was actually coming down. Now, at one point, the bicyclist regained consciousness. He'd been out for this. And once again, he managed to speak a little bit. And he said, "My lady, please call my father. He's a doctor." And out he was again. But he hadn't said what his name was, what his father's name was. He hadn't said any of that stuff. But then Mandy thought he had a bicycle out there that he dropped. She'd go out there and maybe they could find it there. And so out she went into the blast of heat that was out there and found his cell phone where he dropped it on his way to the door, and got it, and then got the bicycle and brought it up the steps and rolled it right in the front door and brought it right there into the living room where Violet was still working on. Now, that was hard to do in a way because she could tell that his one leg, it was his left leg, there was something wrong with it. And she was running her hands and her wet cloth down over that leg, and then she felt that leg all of a sudden pop. And when that happened, even though the bicyclist was still unconscious, she could hear him groan in pain. And then she realized what had happened. His leg had not been broken. He dislocated the bone right there below the knee, what they call it, tibia or something like that. She'd seen that happen one time before in her career when a man falling off a roof had tried to absorb all the shock on one leg, and I don't know how much good it did, but it ended up popping the tibia right out. Well, anyway, that popped back in, and then she kept working on him. So now Mandy began to go through the stuff on the bicycle in those pannier, is that what you call them, those baskets on either side, to see if she could find any identification or anything like that. And she finally did, and it didn't take long before they figured out that the last name of this man was Dulac. And with that last name, it wasn't too hard to find a doctor. And they'd also figured out he was from Pennsylvania, and they got a phone number, and always working on him, cooling him down. But and she turned that job over to Mandy, and then Violet got her phone and dialed up the number of Dr. Matthew Dulac.